that the logical framework, which is a part of the result-based management, is the best tool that would lead you to the desired results. So, because the reason for this is that because this is the participatory methods, so, okay, good. It's the participatory method for designing, implementing, and measuring projects. At the same time, it's the basis for writing project proposals. Also, it simplifies the communication of the clear picture to stakeholders, and also answers the 4 critical strategic questions. It shows the relationship between the all project components with the higher goal, and also establishes the monitoring system and reduces the risk of the rework and conflicts in the project. Actually, I listed here, let's say, only the main benefits, but this list is quite longer. And now I would like to share with you my observation and experience on how I realized these benefits of the log frame. One of the key learning moments was when the expert shared with me the conclusion of the exercises with the project managers at the European Union trainings, where they asked the project managers to take their best project proposals and gave them the markers in 2 colors, the yellow one and green one. They were tasked to go through the proposal and just highlighted all stated problems in yellow and all stated problems in green. In a normal way, for each project problem, there should be either an objective or explanation to a corresponding assumptions. So the result of that exercise was that they have never matched. And it means that in 70% of the project fail rate in organizations, we use the resources to do the wrong activities in the project. Sorry, I just forgot, yeah. This is the 70% of project fail rate in organizations. So at that moment, I just saw that the problem just came from the poor planning. And then I just read the NASA's 15th rules, which says that the review of most failed project problems indicates that the disasters were well planned to happen from the start. And it was nice that that rule has the next 2 sentences, which are the seeds of the problem are laid down early, and the initial planning is the most vital part of the project. Well, it gives me some kind of basis for thought about the planning in a little bit different way. And how usually the planning happens in our organizations? Usually executive assigns project managers and asks them to write the detailed project proposals, and especially the budgeting part, let's say, because the company is always interested in how much it will cost for the organization. And let's say project manager struggles to organize a meeting with the different managers who are always busy, then collect the requirements, and let's say starting writing the proposals, and finally, yes, he has this 15 100-page proposal to present the executives. And during the proposal review meeting, someone will say to you, oh, you know, we need to add some small changes, such as development of the application. And at that moment, you realize that this small change completely affects the whole document concept. And you are ready to kill that person, right? Because, you know, you have spent so many efforts, you have created this perfect document, you just fall in love with this. And are ready to fight for each word in this proposal. Actually, I should say that if you cannot rewrite your document easily, that's not good document. And the problem of the planning is that today professionals are often told about what needs to be done, but are not really clear about why it's needed. And especially if we will talk about, so I mean that in this situation, they can become easily lost in the technical jungle of how, and lost the sight of the bigger picture. And the problem with the planning is that professionals today are often told about what needs to be done, but are not really clear about why it's needed. Especially, this problem is very important for today's reality because organizations often divide the large project into small parts and they think in the same way. Especially if we will talk about the trendy agile project management approach, which usually incurs the frequent change, and also when the scope performed by different teams, each team just perceived its own parts and no one understands the whole logic. Right? And, you know, projects are more just a collection of the parts. Each part is an element of the large system. And all individual parts must work together in order to accomplish the higher goal. And understanding and achieving this higher goal requires the tool that removes the blinders from our mind's eye. And the logical framework is the tool which summarizes the key information about the project for the team members, and also, at the same time, represents them how their piece fits in the among the large context, and also simplifies the communications of the project information on a couple of sheets of papers. Just 1-2 papers is enough to communicate the whole project concept. Actually, when I told about so instead of, let's say, jumping to write this 100-page proposal, the project managers first need to form this logical framework to represent the, let's say, to design the initial project, to make the initial project design, and also represents the key information for the project team. Actually, when I told about the key project information, I meant that the logical framework answers 4 critical strategic questions that should be answered before each project starts. And these questions are: what are we trying to accomplish and why? What are the conditions must exist? How we will measure the success? And only at the end, we can ask, how do we get there? At the first sight, these questions are quite simple. Yeah, but I would like to share with you my experience when I was involved to the project, which lasted almost 3 years and affected directly the level of the customer satisfaction. They would like to create just the possibility in their management system to repay for the customers, to repay the USD loans in the local currency, and they named it as a loan indexation. Yes, quite confused naming. That's why I organized a meeting with the key team members and listened their lively technical discussions. As usual, they were perfect on how, and no one understood what and why. And that was my first question to them. What are we trying to accomplish and why? And they were first to switch from the technical discussions to the customer expectations and needs. That was an unbelievable thing, because I have heard as many opinions as many team members were in the meeting room. And at the end, they were confused and asked me just to clarify it with the executives. So all right solutions begin by asking right questions. After answering these questions, we can manage the expectation from the project, which usually implies the change. And which usually implies, if we, at the end of the implemented project, we cannot see the expected change, it means that there was no need for this project. An argument for not having much time and skipping this stage will lead you to rework, to additional, let's say, conflicts in the, within the project, and even failure of the initiatives. And you know that fixing the problem at the later stage, the cost of it can be quite high. now I'm presenting you, let's say, so many cases just to prove the importance of the usage of the log frame. And now I would like to present the log frame itself. A little bit about the history of the logical framework. So the logical framework was developed by the United States of Defense, Departments of Defense, and then developed, used and adopted and used by the United States Agency for International Development in 1916. You know, now it's even widely used by such companies as Sony, eBay, and others. What's the logical framework? The logical framework is the matrix, or 4 rows and 4 columns, divided by 16 boxes, where all information about the project is written. As you can see from the name, the logical framework, it shows the logical relationship between the different sets of the information to show the dynamic of our thinking process and to fashion the project that are clear, realistic, and manageable. I will present you today the logical framework for my today's speech, which is also can be considered as the project, small project. And as we proceed, you will be able to see that this is not just a form to fill out. This is a dynamic template that lets you fashion the project by asking and answering right questions. Okay, let's start from as you can see from the previous slide, there is a recommended sequence to fill out to form the logical framework. So, the first question, strategic, was what are we trying to accomplish and why? And the objective part captures the answers for these questions. I should note that the logical framework makes distinction among the various levels of the objectives. And all of them have an if-then logic linking them together. So today I'm here presenting you the log frame, and at the end, the concept of the log frame will be presented to you. That's an output of my project. Outputs are the results of several activities, and it's what's received by beneficiaries. In our case, you, as the listeners and conference participants, you are beneficiaries of these outputs. Then, once you will be aware about the logical framework concepts, once I presented it, you will be aware about it. And that's the outcome of the project. Outcome usually describes the change of your behavior. So, maybe some of you, after the conference, will investigate in addition about the logical framework and will change somehow your approach in your project management. And, you know, at the end, it will lead to delivering a successful project. That's an impact level, the goal of the project. It cannot be achieved by the project, but it shows the importance of the project and to what the project contributes. One more note about the objectives, that on output level, as a project manager, you are completely responsible for this part of objectives. Everything with the higher of the output, that's out of control of project managers. I cannot control you after the conference. I cannot control your behavior after the conference, right? Good. Keep in mind, and you can see here the direct, linking the projects to the higher goal. Yeah, keep in mind that always external factors will influence your project. And the assumptions part of the log frame will capture the answers for these questions. For these second critical questions, what are the conditions must exist. They can be positive and negative, but in the log frame, we should state them as a positive, desired situation. Well, sometimes people just ignore the assumptions, but I should know that you can ignore it, but you cannot ignore the impact of the assumptions. And they directly affect the performance of the project and at the same time affect the long-term sustainability of the project. So for my project, the first assumption is the preconditions. Usually it can be, let's say, the policies that should be in place or getting agreement with the major contributors. In my case, it was getting agreement with the organizers, conference organizers. I should know that if this first precondition could not be met, you should not start the project at this situation, in this situation, because it shows the high level of the risk. Well, activities usually don't have assumptions because, you know, that's the part where we can control everything and to adjust it. So at output levels, I should have, let's say, I assume that I will have enough adequate amount of time to present the log frame. And also, I assume that's about me, that I'm an effective speaker. Yeah, then we will move to outcome. Even I present it to you, let's say, the concept of the log frame, I assume that after the conference you will investigate these topics. Well, right? Then I assume that you will have an opportunity to apply it. And also your management, your company will encourage the application of this concept because it requires the change of your behavior in the company. And your management should accept it. By adding assumptions, we add to the log frame real-world realisms. And we can check it here, the horizontal if-then logic as well. And it will show you, and it will help you to test if this log frame is realistic or not. And does this logic hold true or not? Good. So, next one is we always should recognize the accomplishment of the successful accomplishment to the project objectives. And in order to do it, we should define the indicators that will measure the success. That's what the log frame part, indicators and evidence, will help us to form this monitoring system, to establish it. And you should do it at the initial stage of the project. So I cannot control the delivering of successful project because it's out of my control. That's why I didn't put here the indicators. At the outcome level, let's say the number of the questions received from the participants will be 15, and then number of requests for additional training course will be 20. And as the evidence, which will verify the success of these indicators, the results of these indicators will be the chapters database and also emails. Actually, I should say that good indicators should set the target group, the quality, the time, and the quantity. So today my speech presented two as indicators for the output level. I put as a speech presented to 500 listeners, consisted of the 15% of the project managers during the 20 minutes, and also covered 4 strategic questions. Also as an indicator of the successful results, it might be the positive feedback. Let's say 50% of the listeners of the conference will give the positive feedback. And the evidence is the conference registration data, speech text, and follow-up survey. So after answering these third questions, we move to the fourth one, which is the how do we get there? That's the final question, which is usually, let's say, action plan. And here we can describe the how, when, with what resources the project will be implemented. You know, in the literature, you can find many of the log-frame new versions, such as log-frame Millennium or new log-frame, where the expert tried to combine this part with the Gantt chart or work breakdown structure. I should say that they can be useful, but only for the small and medium-sized project. For a large project, the log-frame should be used as a start point. So that's the final part. Here, also, I today would like to note about where I applied this log frame. To prepare the strategic or operational plan of the company, you can use it as well. To decide how to implement the new system. And also, let's say, to plan new products and services. Actually, I can continue this list as the list of the benefits as well. And I tried to put this list from my experience. So I even heard about the applying of the log frame to make decision to get married, you know. Yeah, and I hope that, you know, this information will be helpful for you and in your, let's say, experience or in your management of your project. And also, we'll be happy to discuss details during the, let's say, on any language, let's say Turkish, English, or Russian, during the coffee breaks. And also, you can get my contacts from the PMI Turkey chapter. Thank you very much for your attention.
BTK Akademi, bilginin adresi.